The holographic displays cast a pale blue glow across Owen's dimly lit workspace, their light dancing across the collection of empty energy drink cans scattered across his desk. His fingers moved with practiced precision over the haptic keyboard, each keystroke accompanied by a soft chime that echoed through the cramped apartment. To anyone else, the cascading lines of code might have looked like chaos, but to Owen, they were a symphony he had conducted countless times before. "Come on! Show me what you're hiding," he muttered, pushing his worn leather chair closer to the screens. His latest intrusion into CoreSec's encrypted channels had yielded something different, new security protocols that made his usual tricks look amateur. Owen had been Sloane's eyes and ears in the digital underground for years, but this was unlike anything he'd seen before. Owen's heart rate spiked, but his hands remained steady. He'd written his safety protocols himself. They'd never failed him yet. His fingers flew across the keyboard, rerouting his signal through a maze of proxy servers he'd established throughout the worker districts. The security system pushed back, its AI adapting faster than expected. Owen's eyes widened behind his scratched glasses as he watched the system's countermeasures evolve in real time. "Well, that's new," he whispered, grudgingly impressed. He initiated his emergency protocols, preparing to disconnect when a fragment of encrypted data caught his eye. Project Ghost Echo. 3 words buried in layers of security that made everything else look like a child's puzzle. Owen knew he should back out. This was exactly the kind of thing that got hackers killed. But curiosity had always been his weakness. 7 minutes. That's all he would give himself. The first layer of encryption fell to his custom decryption algorithms. The second proved more resistant, forcing Owen to improvise. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he raced against CorpSec's trace programs. The third layer— "Holy shit," Owen breathed, his face illuminated by the sudden flood of decoded data. "They're actually doing it." A warning flashed in his peripheral vision. "Unauthorized access attempt detected." Owen's hands froze for a split second before muscle memory took over. He deployed his ghost protocols, digital chaff designed to mask his presence. But the system was adapting, learning his patterns faster than any normal security AI should. Come on," he muttered, sweat beading on his forehead as he raced to download whatever he could while maintaining his cloak. The security system was like a predator, hunting through the network, following his digital trail. He could almost feel it breathing down his neck. A progress bar crept forward. 67%, 78%, 89%. Red warnings blazed across his screens. The AI had triangulated his position to within 3 city blocks. His fingers flew across the keyboard, implementing countermeasures, rerouting his signal through a dozen proxy servers. 94%, 97%. The AI was getting closer. 1 block away now. 98%, 99%. Owen slammed the disconnect command just as the download completed, yanking his neural interface cable out with trembling hands. For several long moments, he sat in darkness, listening to his own ragged breathing, waiting to see if CorpSec drones would come crashing through his windows. Nothing came. His screen suddenly flickered, and Owen's heart nearly stopped. They'd found him. His fingers flew across the keyboard, initiating his burnout sequence. Servers would fry, connections would sever, and most importantly, his location would remain hidden. But he had what he needed. 20 minutes later, Owen's secure comlink crackled to life. "Sloane, we have a problem. A big one. CorpSec isn't just upgrading their security, they have enhanced weaponry to specifically battle those with enhanced abilities." Sloane's voice came back tight with concern. How widespread? Not fully deployed yet, but soon. They're calling it Ghost Echo. These aren't your regular troops. They have something new, something specifically designed to hunt. Owen paused, choosing his next words carefully. If Kai is still active in the city, he needs to know about this. They're building a net, and it's going to be a damn good one. Send me everything you found. I'll contact him. Sloane's voice carried the weight of years spent protecting her adopted son. And Owen? Thank you. Be careful. Always am, Owen replied, though they both knew it was a lie. He transmitted the encrypted data package and began the meticulous process of covering his tracks. The safe house was exactly as Sloane remembered it. A forgotten mental institution in an abandoned section of the city's vast infrastructure network. She'd chosen this location years ago for meetings like this, when the risk of being overhead couldn't be tolerated.
The worn metal walls were lined with old maintenance panels, their displays long dead, and the air carried the perpetual chill of the underground. Kai arrived exactly on schedule, moving with the fluid grace that marked him as something more than human, even though he tried to hide it. Sloane felt the familiar ache in her chest. He looked so much like his father. "You're getting sloppy," she said by way of greeting, but there was no real criticism in her voice. "3 cameras caught your approach. Time was you wouldn't have triggered any." "Maybe I wanted to be seen," Kai replied with a hint of a smile, but it faded when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" Sloane activated the datapad Owen had prepared, and a holographic display sprang to life between them, showing CoreSec deployment patterns and security protocols. "They're evolving their tactics. Owen found this in their systems earlier today. They're calling it Ghost Echo." Kai studied the data, his enhanced mind processing the information faster than any normal human could. "Enhanced trackers," he said finally. "They're creating hunters." "Not creating. They've already made them." Sloane's voice was grim. "The program's been running for months. They're using specialized equipment, optimizing to face those that are enhancement. Some can hear a heartbeat from a block away. Others can detect adrenaline, fear, even the specific chemical markers left by enhanced individuals." "Like me," Kai said quietly. "Like you." Sloane reached out, touching his arm, a rare gesture from someone who had spent decades avoiding emotional attachments. "Beck gave you those shots so you could change the world, but he never wanted you to throw your life away doing it. These hunters, they're not like regular CoreSec. They're patient, methodical, and they won't stop." Kai's eyes took on the distant look that meant he was accessing his enhanced cognitive abilities, running scenarios and calculating probabilities. The Symmetry Collective needs to know about this. If CoreSec deploys these hunters in force, they'll tear through the resistance like paper, Sloane finished. "But that's not why I called you here." She hesitated, then continued, "Owen found something else. They're not just looking for enhanced individuals. They're looking for someone specific, someone who's different. The data patterns, the deployment strategies. They're designing this program to find you, Kai." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken fears. Finally, Kai spoke, his voice carrying the weight of decision. "Then we'll have to move faster than they expect. The collective has plans, but this changes the timeline." "Kai," Sloane started, but he cut her off with a gentle shake of his head. "You protected me for 20 years, he said. "You gave up everything, your name, your past, any chance at a normal life, to keep me safe. But we both knew this day was coming. Dad didn't give me these abilities so I could hide forever."
Sloane wanted to argue, to tell him to run, to disappear into the vast urban wilderness beyond the city's borders. But she saw Beck in his eyes, that same unshakable determination to fight for something bigger than himself. "At least let me help," she said finally. "Owen can mask your digital signature, make it harder for them to track you. And I still have contacts in the underground who owe me favors. Kai nodded, his expression softening. I'd like that. But first, there's something I need to know. He paused, gathering his thoughts. All these years, you've never told me exactly how you and Dad met, how you became the person he trusted most in the world. Sloane's lips curved in a sad smile. That's a long story, kid, and not all of it's pretty. We've got time, Kai said, settling back against one of the old maintenance consoles, and I think I need to hear it. Sloane closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memories surface. I was 12 when I first met your father. Back then, the worker districts were even worse than they are now, just pure survival of the fittest. I was running with a gang of kids, stealing whatever we could to survive. Beck? He was different. Even then, he had this way of looking at the world like it could be better than it was. She moved to an old maintenance chair, the metal creaking under her weight. We were both part of the education initiative. This program Novagenics ran to identify promising kids from the worker districts. Your father was brilliant, always taking things apart, putting them back together. Me? I was just street smart enough to fake my way through their tests. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. But then came the day everything changed. I'd gotten cocky, tried to hack into one of the school's terminals to change my test scores. Got caught by the wrong people, a gang that controlled that sector. They didn't take kindly to some street rat trying to play above her station. Kai leaned forward, seeing the distant look in Sloane's eyes as she continued. They took me to an abandoned processing plant. 5 of them, armed with shock batons. I thought I was dead. Should have been dead. But Beck, ... She shook her head, wonder still in her voice after all these years. Beck had followed them, this skinny kid walking straight into a gang's territory. What did he do? Kai asked softly. He used their own security systems against them. See, your father had already started learning about industrial systems, how they worked. He triggered the plant's ancient emergency protocols, lights, alarms, sprinkler systems, everything. In the chaos, he got me out, took a shock baton hit that left him with a scar across his ribs, but he never even hesitated. Sloane stood up, pacing the small space. After that, we were inseparable. Beck taught me everything he knew about systems, and I taught him how to survive on the streets. We had this dream. She paused, her voice catching slightly. We were going to change things from the inside. I believed Beck would become an engineer. I'd learn enough to be useful, and together, we'd find a way to make the system fair. She turned to Kai, her eyes fierce. But the system doesn't want to be fair. The more we learned, the more we saw how rigged everything was. Beck never got his chance at Novagenics' engineering program and had to settle for a thankless job cleaning laboratories. Your father had dreams of becoming an engineer, of changing things from the inside. He'd spend his breaks studying, taking apart discarded lab equipment, teaching himself everything he could. But the system, she paused, bitterness creeping into her voice. The system made sure people like us stayed exactly where we were. No matter how brilliant Beck was, they only saw a cleaner. But he never stopped learning, Kai said, understanding dawning in his eyes. Never, Sloane confirmed. He kept in contact, shared everything he learned. When he discovered what Novagenics was really doing with Evolix, how they were ensuring only the wealthy could ever access it despite promises to eventually share it with the world. That's when he started planning. Years of preparation, building trust, learning security patterns, and when he finally made his move, he came to you, Kai finished. He showed up at my door with a baby. You, injected with 5 stolen doses of the most valuable substance on Earth. Said he needed someone he could trust with his son's life, someone who knew how to disappear. Sloane's voice grew quiet. I asked him why me, after all those years. He said, because you're the only person I know who never stopped fighting for something better. Kai stood, processing this new understanding of his father, of Sloane, of his own purpose. All these years, you've carried this story. And now you carry it too, Sloane said firmly. But remember, your father's last act wasn't just stealing those doses. It was setting the stage for a brighter future, with you. So when you go up against these hunters, when you push forward with whatever the collective is planning, remember that trust isn't just about believing in a cause. It's about believing in people. The distant hum of the city's machinery filled the silence between them, a constant reminder of the world above that needed changing. Finally, Kai spoke, his voice carrying the weight of both his father's legacy and his own destiny. Thank you, he said simply. For everything. Sloane nodded, her usual tough exterior softening for just a moment. Now, let's figure out how to keep these new hunters off your trail. Owen's waiting on my signal to start laying false tracks. As they began planning, the bond between them felt stronger than ever, forged decades ago by a brave, brilliant father who dared to dream of a better world, and preserved by the unshakable loyalty of a street-smart survivor who never forgot what it meant to fight for something bigger than herself.